getting into GSA, you're unlocking access to pretty high dollar bids that are low competition, and they are sent to you by email for 20 years. Our customers bring in about $927,000 per year through the GSA program. They're all open to any vendor. Most companies are eligible, and that's not the problem. The problem is making the leap.
GSA schedule. What does that even stand for? Why is this of importance? It's all over the place. And if and when I get on it, am I just going to be flooded with so many no bid contracts that I'm not going to know what to do with myself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are several kind of like angles to answer that question. The first one is just that this is really confusing, but GSA contracts go by many names. So there's GSA contracts, schedule, multiple award schedule, FSS, FAS. There are so many of them, and they all basically mean the same thing. This is a government program. The GSA, General Services Administration, oversees it. And ultimately, it's there to connect buyers from all agencies, DOD, DHS, Department of Commerce, Education, you name it, all agencies connect to vendors who get into this program through a very convoluted paperwork and review process. And that's where we come in and help. So getting flooded with no bid contracts isn't really something that happens a lot through GSA. They're usually pretty good contracts. Everything from small stuff that, small businesses should probably go after initially to bigger contracts. And even Sam.Gov has GSA kind of earmarked contracts in their system as well. Does that answer everything?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I know several years ago, my mentor, she unlocked the GSA key. She showed me, she said, Kizzy, when you get on this GSA schedule, this one in particular is for training, and I'll have you speak in a moment about all of the different areas. And she said, when you're in this area, she's like, once you get on this contract, only vendors on this contract can bid. She's like, so now you have a smaller pool. And she said, different agencies, maybe they want to get to you, they can buy from you via your schedule. And once I heard that, I said, oh, this makes sense. And we ended up getting on the MAS schedule for training, and we've sold several training courses to a variety of agencies because you're vetted. That's what's so beautiful about this schedule is they're vetting you. They're not concerned like on Sam.Gov, like who's this person writing us? Do they have a valid cage code? And I gotta go look them up. So I would love to learn about who can get on this thing. Because I know when I got on years ago, it was like mysterious. And I feel like now it is just this whole nother thing now.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Getting into GSA, you're unlocking access to usually pretty high dollar bids that are low competition because you're only competing against other GSA folks. And they are sent to you by email for 20 years. This is a long-term contract. So if you're in the product space, there's a system called GSA Advantage. It's like the Amazon.com for government buyers as well. So GSA has these systems, and that's really where the benefit lies in getting into the GSA program. As far as eligibility goes, who can get in here? Not everybody can. So there are a couple things you want to consider. And really, I'll say not everyone can, but most can. Most companies are eligible, and that's not the problem. The problem is making the leap and just saying, I'm going to get into this program so I can pursue federal sales and scale my company. But really a couple things. 2 years in business is really helpful, but not an absolute requirement anymore because of something called the Startup Springboard program. The absolute requirement, and this is really the only one, is past performance. So even in Startup Springboard, you have to have some past performance. GSA doesn't want to be your guinea pig. They don't want brand new companies to get into GSA. The only way that I could possibly see around that is if there's a really innovative new company and somebody like from the Army says, we need their products, we want their products, and they will kind of sponsor that company through. Doesn't happen very often, but if you have those Army connections or whatever, any agency really, you can kind of push through that way. The only other thing is just that, government loves their acronyms, but they also love their categorizations. So the GSA has 12 kind of pillars, if you call them, large categories, everything from IT, professional services, facilities, office products and services, all, and it goes on and on. There are 12 of them. And then from there are small categories within those pillars. And then there are sins at the bottom. Those are special item numbers. They're the very, kind of the bottom of the categories, bottom of the hierarchy. So you have to fit into at least one of those small categories. And there are about 350 of them. So it's not hard to fit into them. But, if you sell weaponry or anything like that, it's just not on GSA. If you sell medical devices, that's another program that's kind of a sister program to GSA called the Federal Supply Schedule. And that's actually run by the VA, although it uses GSA systems to, basically manage transactions. But the VA is the one that signs the contract on that one.
No, I love this. And for the Federal Supply Schedule, because you said the VA uses that, does somebody have to have a service-disabled veteran-owned small business? Is it open to large businesses, small businesses? What is the requirement?
Yeah, any and all. So GSA contracts, Federal Supply Schedule contracts, they're all open to small, large, women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned, all contract hold. Any vendor can go in at any time. This is an always open window as well. Because I talked to somebody today and they said we were thinking about getting to GSA, but we were waiting to hear about when the window opened because they're used to Oasis and Stars and all that stuff. And they're like, we never got the email. And I'm like, oh. And it turned out they ended up losing a really big contract because they were waiting and they just didn't have the information to just know that you could go in with your offer at any time.
And that's heartbreaking. And I do recall that. I mean, the schedule and the technology around it has evolved really quickly. Like you easily, once you get on, you log in, you go in the portal, and the opportunities you see, those are it, whether it's one or it's hundreds. And I really like that because you're narrowing the competition. It's focused in on your areas of expertise. And often, at least the schedules that we're on, they don't require a lot. It's maybe they want a quote or they want some information or maybe based on price. But I know that you use often kind of like a questionnaire or so. You've spoken to much of it, but what are some other questions a business should ask themselves to see if they're in the position? So the 2 years is kind of flex, but the past performance, what if they have past performance with a nonprofit or with a state or local government, or what if they have past performance in another country? Would that still make them eligible for a schedule?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kizzy, because a lot of my customers that end up jumping on board were sitting around waiting for the first federal project to land. And they thought, I need a federal project and then I can get into GSA. But that's just not the way that it works. You can use commercial, like you said, nonprofit, education, state and local, all that stuff.
Which is great. And then I know a component, and that's why I appreciate you being here, because it can seem daunting. It can seem overwhelming. And, right now you're assisting us with adding an additional kind of SIN or NAICS code. And to help with that, because that's the point of this channel, is to take something that seems very complex and to make it easier because everything is possible. And what about the pricing? Because I remember early on, people would say like, oh, you just use your pricing. And at that point in time, when I started out in like 07, 08, I didn't have this sophisticated price list. I mean, I barely understood what a purchase order was. So talk to us about this whole like pricing and GSA pricing and discounts to GSA.
Yeah. Your GSA pricing should have a lot of thought put into kind of the strategy. And it's not really complicated, but it should be kind of planned out stage by stage, because the whole timeline of the project, here's kind of where pricing comes into play. Initially, your just commercial price list is handed over to the GSA. So they see it, they see your commercial rates. And in another document, you're basically moving a lot of that information into the right places, called the price proposal template, the PPT. And another thing you're doing there is you're offering your discount to GSA for the first time. So this is kind of through the gate, getting into the GSA program. You're submitting and you're telling them they don't require anything. You offer the initial discount. They could come back and say, 1%'s not enough and throw kind of a little fit about that, but you're not really required to have really anything there. I've seen people, going in with a 0% discount. I've seen rejections as a result because the GSA reviewer sometimes will just say, well, why would I even entertain this if you're not, anybody could get you at your 0% discount. So they want something going in, but at that initial stage, you give them as little as you can because that leaves a lot of room for what comes later in the process negotiations. So the process goes through the whole review. They look into everything. And then when negotiation times come, the GSA will have done their homework. They'll have the kind of competitive analysis of your pricing. They'll have compared you against your peers, all that stuff, and they're going to throw a number at you. That's just how it works. So usually, this is kind of funny, when I'm on a negotiation call, I always ask the question, no matter what the GSA asks for, is this a absolute requirement to continue negotiations, or basically, or not? And the not basically means, are you just kind of throwing numbers at me to see if you could get better, which is their job. They spend taxpayer dollars. Good on them for doing that. But what that question does is it kind of figures out, are they just asking for a discount that isn't absolutely required, or does their research basically say we're outside of the discount, we're outside of the price range, and we do need to get inside of that bubble to continue? And if they say, no, you're kind of outside of the price range, you're not competitive, then we can kind of get back and forth on negotiations from there.
And what's great about your experience in this space is
Yeah. Unless you're on those negotiation calls all the time, you don't really know the nuance, and things can go a little bit sideways, which I've had people reach out to me and say, we went through our negotiations. It went terribly. We lose money on every government deal. We need you to come in and help fix it. And once negotiations close, it's not impossible, but it's pretty hard to change your discount. GSA, you'll have to have a really good reason and a really nice GSA contracting specialist. Those two will be required to get that through.
And that's another part of this, is there's this misnomer that you get no bid contracts. It's like you click 3 buttons and boom. And none of that is true. Just like many don't talk about, you have an actual contracting officer, a contracting specialist assigned to you, and there are requirements. Can you talk to the kind of quarterly, annual requirements for some of these schedules?
Yeah, for sure. So after negotiations, this is a great question because it kind of carries off from the last one. After negotiations, the GSA adds this little tiny bit to your final price. It's called the IFF, the Industrial Funding Fee. And it's actually really timely too, because we're actually just today, Congress and the president haven't come to terms, and the budget is just kind of floating off in space. If sequestration happens and the government shuts down and all that stuff, this industrial funding fee is actually what, kind of piles up in a vault somewhere for GSA. And when they need it, they call upon that and they start using that to pay the team to keep the trains running on time at GSA, keep the reviews going and all that stuff. Because if GSA had to shut down, spending would take a huge hit and government would really grind to a halt in a really bad way. So that industrial funding fee, getting back to that, it's, if your final GSA price is $100 an hour, then you're going to go out and charge $100.75 to all of the agencies that buy from you through GSA. They're going to pay that little tiny bit more. You're going to hold on to that little bit. And then when you go and report your sales, you're going to cut a check to the GSA for 0.75% of your total GSA sales in that period. And then that floats them when they need it.
Which is great, because what this schedule does is you've been vetted. It puts you in this pool where some schedules it may be thousands, other schedules it may be hundreds, but not everybody bids. That's the thing. And so it makes it, what I've seen, easier. I've seen STARS 3 opportunities on Unison. I've seen GSA opportunities on Unison. I've seen GSA opportunities on SAM. All kinds of things have happened and opened up as a result of our schedules. And so it's definitely worth that investment, to whether you pay somebody or you try to do it yourself. It's one of those things where if you do it yourself, it may take longer. or you can speed up the process by paying someone. And one of the reasons I've come across this like heightened energy and focus on the schedule is around the presidential executive orders. If you could speak to what does all of this mean? There's so many executive orders. Simplify this, reduce the FAR, more use of GSA. If you could just kind of whittle that down.
Yeah, you're right. Early on, Trump started issuing executive orders, and there were so many that everybody kind of lost count of what was going on. But in the community I live in, GSA and procurement, there were two very important ones. One of them was to clean up the FAR, which was the Federal Acquisition Regulation. It's the big rule book that government buyers have to keep to, or they get in big trouble, and their careers are ruined. They don't get to retire and go off into the sunset. So it's a really important thing, but it got so complicated over the years because anything related to procurement, usually from Congress on down, gets rolled into that, and it just was a massive document. They're going to go kind of untangle that and simplify it. On the other side, this is where I'll speak to most. There was an executive order. It's called the Executive Order to Streamline Government Procurement. And in a nutshell, it basically said that we're going to flow all of spending through government that can into the GSA. The GSA was, as an agency, was created by Truman back in the 50s for the sole purpose of streamlining government procurement. Even back then, I don't think the hammers were $50 back then, but they were probably $15, and that was too much. So they started seeing the problem of massive organization. A lot of dollars float off into the corners, and a lot of kind of silly things happen. So it's embarrassing. They created GSA, but over the years, 50 years is, 70 years is a long time. And a lot of drift happens in that time. And that's what happened in government. So GSA, even though it was created as the kind of procurement arm of government, started to, lose a little bit of power and control because these decentralized hubs inside of all agencies started to pop up and say, we're going to do a little bit of spending here, and we're going to do a little bit of spending there. And that started becoming, it just started happening everywhere, where all agencies and even every region of an agency of a department would have its own spending group. And that group would buy, and it just started creating these scenarios where they would purchase huge, masses of computer paper. They'd sit in a warehouse and rot because, that person would get fired or move on to another place. And the knowledge that paper sat there in that warehouse and existed went with that person. So everybody in that office just kept buying computer paper as needed, stuff like that. So kind of like to wrap everything up there, this executive order shut down all of those decentralized purchasing hubs in all of the agencies and their departments and said all of spending is going to the GSA. And this is starting to play out in technology. You're hearing in the news a lot of like the Google, Salesforce, all of the AI companies are all getting these major contracts lined up with government. Government's negotiating massive discounts on them, and that's always been the purpose of GSA. But the other writing on the wall is that all of the other stuff, they call them BIC, best-in-class purchase channels for stuff that's not technology, whether it's vehicles or office products or scientific or any and all, those GSA multiple award schedule, GSA contract, that's the place where that is most likely to go. And by the, words of the GSA commissioner himself, they're expecting a quadrupling of GSA sales by next year, 2026. And that whole process that the executive order laid out is about, I'd say, a 7-step process. And I think they're at about step 5 right now. So it's rolling and it's actually moving along.
So then this is really the time to get on the schedule, especially given there's a program where you don't have to have 2 years. You definitely need some type of experience, but now is the time because they're on step 5. There's a couple steps left, and they're going to quadruple the sales on these different schedules and best-in-class vehicles.
Yeah, definitely. And all of the buyers that would go to these decentralized hubs are going to GSA now. Just talked to somebody today where they had a major contract and they were getting the bid together. They were asking all these questions. And then it turned out, oh, well, this was the Army. They said, this is actually going to be going to GSA now. And they didn't have a GSA contract. That's why they had to jump on a call with me real quick. So those decentralized hubs that all agencies were depending on for purchasing, they're all having to kind of reorient over to GSA.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing to watch it. Like I've already started to see a little bit of it with just the type of listings and just this further push on different media outlets for the schedule. How did you get into this work, Josh, helping people get on the schedule and become so knowledgeable of all of the areas of the GSA schedule?
Yeah, I mean, my origin story goes back to right after college. I got a job with my family business, security integrators, and they also do fire. Still around, 35 years and running strong. And yeah, I'm a fourth generation small business owner, so it's kind of in my blood. I started working for them after college, and my stepdad came up and kind of dropped that project on my desk. He was like, I'm doing all this municipal work, got a couple federal contracts, but I keep talking to these people and they say, you need to get into GSA, we'll get you more work. So he tasked me to get the company into the GSA program. As I started researching it, I found the solicitation after, probably a couple hours of searching around for it. Finally found it, started reading through it, and I said, I don't want to do this. And I went to Google or whatever search engine was around back then and started looking for a helper, a provider. And unfortunately, there really wasn't anybody. They all were charging, gosh, I think like $20,000 to hold your hand kind of here and there through the process. So I was like, that's just a complete ripoff. I did it myself, and it was kind of fortunate because as I did it myself, and as awful as it was the first time, I learned how to do something that ultimately I was able to kind of see small businesses need this support. I knew I could do it more efficiently than the first time. I knew I could get the price down way, way under $20,000. And that's kind of what I did. So, and I was right. Small businesses kind of needed that help. And a lot of them came to me early on and continued. And over the past 20 years, I've just filled my head with GSA knowledge. This is all I've done. So I don't know if there are many people in the country that know as much about GSA from my end of things, from the vendor side, as I do, and especially across all categories, IT, professional services. It's really been interesting because I've been able to see how all of these businesses work, and I could tell you how buying groups work in food service. I could tell you how value-added resellers work in IT. So my business knowledge is this kind of cobbled together work of just companies and stuff like that. So we try to be a ongoing, just strategic partner with all of our customers, and I get really friendly with our customers as well. And yeah, it kind of goes from there. So I, over the years, would be surprised. I stopped counting, but I'd be really surprised if I haven't touched at least 1,000 GSA contracts.
Yeah, I would say at least. And that's one thing that I like about your background and what you offer is because there's a lot of companies out there that they want to charge an exorbitant amount of money. They just straight lie to people, mislead them. And even if they get on a schedule, they have no idea what they got on. And although it's a license to sell a particular product or service, you still need to be aware of what this license is. You're not just going to apply for a hunting license and you're like, oh, I thought I was getting a license for boating. It's like, and you are really helpful. You have that heart of a teacher. You're there to assist them. You're not trying to just do these other companies. And so I really appreciate that. And could you also speak to, but before you do, can you provide how people can reach you? And then I have a burning question. How can people reach out to you, Josh? What's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, any questions or anything that you need, I'm here to help around GSA. So yeah, sales@gsafocus.com will come to me and my team, and we'll get back to you really quick. You can just reach out to me and say, hey, let's jump on a call, or I have this GSA thing, or am I eligible? Here's my situation. You can go to my website, gsafocus.com, and then the top right, there is a button you could click and get right onto an appointment with me, usually same day or next. I kind of keep my appointments really tight and close together. So that's a good option. And yeah, you could follow me on YouTube. You just look up GSA Focus on YouTube, LinkedIn Connect, all those good ones. But yeah, your connection of choice will work for me.
Yes. And please, by all means, reach out if it works for you. And what I would love to know is if you could talk to some of your success stories to a company or two who needed to get on a schedule, got on a schedule, and leverage the schedule, meaning they got sales.
Yeah. No, I love my success stories. I try to get video testimonials because those are the best. Uh, and they're also just, they keep me going. I love like showing my team, hey, look, we did this, you know? So yeah, I mean, a couple of them, just like three come to mind just off the top of my head. One was a company out of Hawaii, and they had a lot of really good state stuff going. And the state said, we're starting to transition to GSA through cooperative purchasing. Jump into GSA. We want you to keep servicing us. We can't do much with you unless you're on GSA. So they came to me. We got them on. It was one of the quickest. I think it was about a month. We got them into the program. Everything just lined up. Even with Fastlane, we're usually at about 2 or 3 months, but I think they were just a really, really quick one. And yeah, they jumped right in. 1.3 million just about every year for several years after that. This and going strong. And then another one was kind of like same-ish story, but not really as expedited. We got them into the program. They are kind of a professional services company, and they kind of ramped up. 0 sales the first year because there wasn't much time in the year left. And then the next year, I think they got up to like 300,000, then 600, then 1.3, 1.4, and then kind of, held that for a little bit. So they had that kind of like ramp up, which is probably, unless you have a government buyer lined up, that's what you kind of expect. Building momentum, getting your building your experience, and just getting out there so that you're known by buyers. And yeah, the other one, I actually just did an interview with them for a video testimonial a few months back, and I got them on, and it was a hard one. We had a really tough contracting officer that just kept asking for more and more stuff, and they were a really good sport about it. They were, really patient, but we just kept getting the contracting officer what they wanted. They'd want A, we'd give them A. They'd say, now give me B. And then we give them B. They say, give me A again. I'm going to reject you if you don't give me A again. It was one of those cases. So it was just, it took longer than it should have and all that, but we got them in, and just the way that his face lit up when he called me and was like, hey, we got our first one. And I was like, tell me about it. He's like, it was dinner time. I was there with my wife, him and his wife. It's a family business. And, he's like, he gets a call from defense agency, because they're in aerospace, and he's like, yeah, we got it. And then his wife's like, yeah, I can't remember the look on your face. You jumped out of the seat, and because they put the bid in, and then they waited, and it was 3 months later, and then they get the call at night, and it's like, you won. And it was a $2 or $3 million contract. It was massive for them. So just really cool stuff. And I always tell I tell my customers at the end of the process too, don't forget to email me when you get your first award. I want to hear about that.
No, and I love that, because it shows what's possible once you get the schedule. Even if the first year you don't get any sales, you'll get sales. I mean, I think our very first GSA sale, the first sale off the schedule was like $2,300, but they ended up using a credit card. But it was still something. It showed oh my God, they actually picked us. And then we bid on other opportunities since then. So I love that. I'm also curious, what is the one thing that people out there who are contemplating, I don't know, maybe I should. What is the one thing you're you have to do this if you're even remotely thinking about a schedule?
So let me just clarify. What is the one thing that they just need to know so that
know or do or be ready for?
Okay. So the one thing I would say is just pursuit. Like you were saying, Kizzy, this is a license to hunt. So be ready to hunt. Don't get the license to hunt and then just put it in your wallet and forget about it. Be ready to hunt. And what you could do to go a level deeper is prepare. Learn about proposal writing, read books, go to Kizzy's site and learn proposal writing there if you want to, save months and months of time. But also just put in kind of the work to set up you don't even have to set anything up really. Just have the mindset of, how do I take what the success I've done in the past and morph it into what will work in government. And you'll be surprised how similar they are, but they're a little different, of course.
I love that. And I can't thank you enough, because I know for a fact many people are going to really benefit from this, because you take this topic, you take this space, which seems like you just easily mix in some Kool-Aid, a mixture, and some sugar, and it's a little more involved. But what's beautiful about it is it continues to give. As you said, some of these contracts are good for 20 years.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
amazing.
yeah, you can't beat 20 years of just getting emails with opportunities. That's what GSA offers. It's a 20-year contract. So it's just long-term opportunities. That's what's there. And some people look at that and they're like, I'm running towards that. And then others will just shy away and they say, that's a big decision. It's like, it's a big decision. It's a really good decision, for most. And that's another thing on those calls. My goal is to really just help you assess if this is a good move for your company, if you are eligible, if there is anything you kind of need to get over a hurdle first, and then let's talk. I'll coach a lot of people into that, but I'm not here to hard sell or get anybody in. The last thing I ever want to do is go through all this work, have you go through all this work and pay me, and it just go nowhere for you. And yeah, I'm happy to say that doesn't happen too often. Our customers bring in about 927,000 per year through the GSA program.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. That's an 87x ROI per year, not just an 87x ROI. Like, you give me this, you give me our rate, and then I give you 87 times more. I'll give you 87 times more, but then next year another 87 times for 20 years. So you can imagine just how that like compounds.
I love that. And so I encourage everybody, reach out, ponder, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification button, share the video. Check out winnerswaybook.com. Also send a message if you're interested to sales@gsafocus.com. Connect with Josh, because who knows where things are going to go. But what's beautiful is when you have a 20-year contract, you're already on the train. So no matter what happens to the tracks or the weather, you're still on the train. So I suggest y'all reach out. Thank you again, Josh. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button. And until next time, everything is possible. Take care.